Hi Ashley, thanks for agreeing to talk to me today about a recent discovery you've made on a cliff face or mountain edge in Colombia. So just for the sake of our listeners and by way of introduction, you're an author and an explorer based in Colombia. Whereabouts in Colombia?
Just outside Bogota, about an hour's north. It's a small village called Tabio. I live just outside there.
Okay, nice. You also do filmmaking and you have your own website, ashleycowie.com, where you blog about latest discoveries and research that you've done. And so one of your recent announcements was about these carved heads that you found on a cliff face in Colombia. So I want to ask you a bit about that discovery and the significance of it. But before we get into that, I just want to take a little step back and ask you about the mountain itself. So Peña de Juaica, where you found these carved heads. A lot of stories about paranormal phenomena, strange lights, that kind of thing. What can you tell me about those?
It's a unique mountain in South America, and I mean continental-wide. There's more UFO reportings and sightings of whizzing balls of light and what are labelled as mysterious energies than any other mountain range or particular mountain in South America. So for a year now, I've been living in the shadow of Juaica. And you know, I'm a skeptic by nature. I watch the lighting phenomenon 3 or 4 nights a week with my girlfriend.
Really?
I see it. So what we see is 4 or 6 hours of prolonged sheet and ball lightning. We physically watch that 4 or 5 nights, 3 or 4 nights a week. So there's no room for me to write this off as a skeptic, as it being a mass hallucination or an illusion by the locals. I'd love to think it was that, but there is more going on. So my research project started a year ago by going to the head of the Geological Society in Colombia and asking him the question, WTF is going on with your mountain?
Now, is that why you're there? Is that why you're living there, to investigate that? Or it just happened that you were there and then you heard about and saw these strange lights?
I'll backtrack slightly. So, as you know, I have a TV show in the UK called The People's History Show. So we dig up and air cute little stories, lesser known stories about lesser known folk heroes in Scotland. But when I'm not doing that, I'm doing that in other countries. So I'm doing that here. And for a year, I've been developing this people's history, platform, if you like. And this article was the first on that platform. So I did come here specifically to address local mysteries and histories relating to the Muisca, of which so little is known. That civilization, there's just so little known about it. So I'm in the heart of it. And the mountain is at the heart of the Muisca agricultural civilization north of Bogota. Mm-hmm. So the first thing was stripping the myths back from this mountain to see it for what it actually was to the Muisca. We have a habit of projecting our own pop cultural views onto such mysterious phenomenon. You speak to one person, it's UFOs. That was the guy who watched Star Wars when he was 12. Speak to the next guy and it's a dead Muisca's entity because he watched the Poltergeist when he was 15. Stripping back the pop cultural projections we put onto this mountain, and that's what I did. And the head of the Geological Society told me, honestly, the scientific community are at a loss as to what causes these lights. They don't deny their existence, but what they do know is that there's a higher magnetic load, metal content in that mountain than any in its range, and in any in Colombia. So they don't see it as a coincidence that these ball lightning and apparition and phenomenon are appearing in a mountain that's got a higher magnetic load than most. Okay. So, but the magical thing is how these lights have been perceived. That's the beauty in this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What do the locals say about it? Do they have legends about the cause of these lights? Do they think it's, messages from the gods, or what are the indigenous people saying?
It's wonderful. So there's an indigenous reserve in a village called Cota, about 2 miles from where I am, and they call these lights the Mohan. They believe they're Muisca souls that have enlightened so much that they've turned into light energy, and that they arc between 2 mountains locally, and that's where the lights are seen arcing. So they believe they're charging horses of enlightened Muisca spirits. The biggest quotient of people locally believe it's UFO. It's called the Gateway of the Gods. There's a massive house built on the mountain with a research centre now observing these UFO phenomenon and whatnot. And the truth is, these are unidentified flying objects. You can't deny that. Mm-hmm. But the origins of those unidentified flying objects we differ with. So we've got another legend locally where Muisca, a lot of the indigenous people believe, when the Spanish invaded here in 1537, over 200 Muisca jumped off Peña de Juaica, committed suicide rather than submitting to Spanish rule. And there's a really thick local belief that it's the souls of the dead Muiscas that are creating these balls of energy. And remember, we live in the Andes here. They don't have cosmology, science and religion like we do. They live with cosmovision, where everything's alive and interrelated. So it's wrong for me to say that they're wrong in their interpretation when a scientist cannot tell me they're definite about theirs. Yeah. Everything's got to be open, I think.
Yes, absolutely. So how did you come to be looking for carved heads? Is this something that you've
That's just a total one of these things in life where you set out going from A, B, and C, and before you know it, you're on LMN. 6 months after meeting the head of the Geological Society, or 8 months, I get a call from a Professor Bernal in Tabio who hears about my research and work. And he calls me up, and it's classic. This is an 80-year-old professor calling me up in my mid-40s going, come to my house. I have something to share with you that will give you the quest you're looking for. And I'm like, dude, really? So I was joking with my girlfriend about this, going, I've got some kooky old professor here winding me up. So we went along, and very mysterious, wonderful old research library, and he sits down, he lights up his pipe, and he announces it. He goes, my great-granduncle was the Archbishop of Colombia. The leaders of the indigenous people locally told him of 3 heads on the mountain. They brought him there, they showed it to him, and he painted it. I've lost those paintings.
Have you seen the paintings?
No, this is the thing. So here we go. So he tells me about them. All right, so I now have a story. That's it. I've got I don't give a hoot that he's a professor. Let's be honest with you, professors used to say it was okay to smoke cigarettes. So I get a professor here with a big claim. So researching further into that claim, I find that the local mayor in Tabio in 1979 also got taken there and sketched those sketches. So what I did here, April, was, excuse my term here, but I put my balls on the line. I have published what I believe to be those 3 indigenous heads. In 2 weeks' time, I'm going to get the sketchings from the mayor of Tabio.
Oh, brilliant.
Now I'm going to publish those. I might be wrong. I'm happy to admit it. If he shows me 3 different heads, but can I be cheeky? I know I'm right.
So how did you find them? How did you spot these heads?
Yeah, that was a really interesting process. The process was I got to the mountain. Right, what I did was use Google Maps to discern all of the areas on the mountain the heads cannot be seen from Tabio. Why would they have mountain heads facing west where there's nobody there to see them? So I came up with about a 30% section of face of the hill, and I went to it, and I was looking up. Of course, I was stupid. I was too close. I can't see anything. I retreated for 2 kilometers, and I went into that place where, in the scientific process requires that you get rid of illusions and pre-programmed notions that you have of a thing and see it for what it is. Well, I actually did the reverse. I had to go into the super artistic frame of mind and try to pull images from an otherwise natural mountain. So I was a good half hour. And I'll be honest with you, about 7 or 8 formations came out that I thought these could be heads. But as I moved around the mountain, 3 in particular absolutely popped out. They popped out. And, the real truth of this, April, is I don't have a smoking gun. I don't have the definitive answer from a professor in Bogota going, those 3 heads are the 3 Muisca heads. But what I do have are 2 leaders from indigenous communities around here going, son, you've got 2 of them for sure. We argue about the 3rd. So it's pretty good times out here. I'm getting lots of attention now from the archaeological community in Bogota who want to come and see these things further, who've already said, look, you've got 1 of them, but there's 2 that are different. So there's a real quiz, a sort of debate going on about it, and that's precisely what I started out to generate. Right,
that's fantastic.
Raise the question. I'm a man of little answers and many questions.
Well, that's always the place to start. Now, skeptics could say, I've seen the photographs, you can see heads there, you can see faces, but skeptics could say, well, this is just a coincidence, it's just the way the rocks form, it's natural formation. What would you say to that? I mean, what evidence is there that they are man-made?
Okay. Well, I can answer the first question first. What I would say to skeptics is, I agree with you 100%, I am you. But we cannot let scientific reason and our inherent skepticism get in the way of what is quite simply under our nose to see.
Sure.
And this is what's really funny. Yesterday, a gold diver from the Museum of Bogota calls me up, it emails me, Facebook messaged me, furious at my exploitation of a local Muisca artifact. And he said, these are not heads. So do you know, and he said a line in his message, and I thought, this guy's not read my article. He's looked at the pictures and he's taken me down. So I asked him a few questions about the article, and half an hour passed. Then he came back and he goes, do you know what? I think maybe 2 of those are possibly right. So it's the skeptic comes in and goes, oh, we've got a nut job Scots guy who's the next Van Daniken who's finding mountain gods. I'm not saying I found the mountain gods. I'm saying look at those things that look like 3 heads. What do you reckon?
Yeah.
I think these match the legends, they match the myths, they match the report from the Archbishop of Bogota, the local mayor of Tabio, and Professor Bernal that I met. I think it's almost more unreasonable for me to say, nah, you guys are all wrong, those aren't heads. I think it needs the due diligence and the right appropriate questioning, but they're there. They're there. I think the photographs kind of show that.
Yes. And
the legends of these 3 heads, there are Muisca traditions and there's names associated. I mean, one of the heads is believed to be a character called the Mohan, a semi-mythical boogeyman, if you like, in Colombian culture. So it's not like I've found 3 things that look like 3 heads and then reverse engineered and found all the evidence to back it up.
There are legends around these heads.
This is a linear set of questions, yeah? Mm-hmm. But as I say, the skeptics are as valid as the believers in this. What we need to have done now, the second phase is this. We're not going to go up to that mountain and find chisels. These weren't done with chisels. These are 350 meters high. These were done with ropes over the edge of the cliffs, with harder stones being swung and knocking large areas of rock out. That's what we're going to go along and look for. Are they impact, the bulbs of percussion they're called, where a rock would have been smashed into another rock. But I'll be honest with you, I can't do that. I'm a type 1 diabetic that monitors my blood sugars every hour. That's an 8-hour hike in most arduous conditions to get there. You got a 4-hour back. Yeah, so it's an 8 hours up there, at least 4 or 6 hours to investigate the thing. We probably need rock climbers there to get the first 100 meters up to the bottom of the chin of the first head. So, but as I said, what I thought was I can wait 4 or 6 months, organize all this, do all this, and what I can do is write my article and get it out there. Because the truth of the matter is, this is kind of a launch discovery. I've got 2 or 3 other majors in Colombia, and I wanted to get this out there, establish myself as an authority, if you like, in the history scene here, and then I'm going to start rolling out these new things that I've discovered in the last year. So the 3 heads is kind of like the access point for me. So I thought, get it out there. Next week or the week after, I'll publish the 3 pictures from the mayor of Tabio, and that will be the big judge of whether I'm a lunatic seeing ducks and clouds or whether I found 3 Muisca heads. And I'm happy either way.
That's brilliant. So what do you think then will be the next steps in terms of verifying, whether these are indeed the 3 godheads or not? I mean, do you think you could get a scientific team up there that go abseiling down the mountain, or what do you think is needed to do next?
Right. What's needed next is what's happening today. I'm going to go and present this officially to 2 archaeologists in Bogota. What will then happen is they will obviously put that out to their specialists in rock art and manipulated mountains, and they're going to call something on this. They're going to say it's absolutely not or it absolutely is. So we're going to do that, the orthodox scientific method. But what we're also going to do is go to indigenous Muisca shaman in the reserves around here. Because here's the thing, a scientist from the University of Bogota with a qualification in archaeology does not see the Muisca landscape the way an indigenous shaman sees it. One has a Western religious scientific outlook, the other has an Andean cosmovision outlook. And the observations of an Andean shaman are equally as valid as that of a PhD scientist in University of Bogota.
Both sides, both perspectives.
We need both sides, because a scientist can say, look, there are marks here that this has been that it's been done by hand, but we cannot establish that 100%. So we've got to take all of this information in, the visual and subjective evidence, and also the objective evidence. And that's where I'm in the middle of just now, and I've got believers on each side, and I've got absolute naysayers on each side. The skeptics are the angriest by far. But as I say, what I love about them is because I do it myself. They see a picture and they just go, "Oh, you're off your rocker," and then they read. And I've done it myself. I see some stuff, articles published there. It'll be, evidence of God found on Earth, ? Has it? And all this shite. So I don't get into that. What I do is I just put myself out there and we'll open the debate and we'll see where the cards fall within the next few months.
Yeah.
But I've got to keep coming back to this.
Yeah.
I know those 3 Muisca heads.
Yeah, extremely intriguing. I really love to hear the outcome. So you must get back to us when you have further news from both sides.
Can I be honest with you, April? What I'm going to do here is, if those are if I get that accredited, if you like, whether it's from Muisca, whether it's from the university, I'm going to publish that it's been proven. See if I'm seeing ducks and clouds here and someone shows me evidence that this is all in my head. I'm going to write another article about how we are deluded by our own imaginations and our brain, and that I went through a whole year's research process thinking I found 3 heads. It turns out that I didn't. I will resign from my People's History show and I'll write an article about delusion.
It sounds good. Sounds good. Well, thanks so much for your time, Ashley. Really appreciate it. And you have to keep in touch. Let us know the outcome.
Indeed. It was great talking to you, April.
Thank you.